Welcome everyone from wherever you are. And there it is. It's 9 o'clock on the West Coast. So welcome everyone to the Thursday, June 18th edition of the Vancouver Power BI Modern Excel User Group Meetup. Super happy to have our good friend Joseph Yeates here to do a full feature presentation. Rather than just leave him with what's new in Power BI, he gets to actually talk about what's cool with Power BI. So we're looking forward to that. But of course, before we start, I just got a few things I need to say, like thanks to the sponsors that make all this stuff happen. Skillwave is my training company where we teach you how to be awesome with Excel and Power BI. It's run by Excel Guru, who also happens to be the creator and distributor of our Monkey Tools add-in to help you build better Excel solutions. Our next meetups that we have coming up in a couple of weeks, we've got Jakob Nielsen who's going to be joining. Great friend of the program here who's going to be coming back to talk about unlocking the power of organizational data types. So that's going to be a cool show that you should definitely come and check out. And then our Power BI track, we're welcoming Shu Bays back, and she's going to be talking about turning semantic models into insights, automation, and AI. And I always enjoy the perspective that she brings to the program as well. So sign up for those and make sure that you come and attend. We're looking forward to hosting both. As far as Monkey Tools goes, what's new in Monkey Tools? I actually just released another update last night at about 6 o'clock last night with a quick little bug fix here. But some of the cool things we brought into Monkey Tools over the last little bit, we now have an auto expand and collapsing formula bar. Since the last time I actually talked about this is now right on the Monkey Tools ribbon with a checkbox you can toggle on and off for the folks that don't love it. Or if you just need to toggle it briefly because you're doing some editing work. So that's a new sort of change in that area. Our indent and unindent formula options for pro users I've done a little bit more work on the tokenizer and parser in that particular area there. So it's a little bit more reliable. Our switch functions are now indenting pairwise, which actually looks pretty cool. So some good features there. We've got new BiblioMonkey formula tags for ranges and spill anchors to help you be able to tag things to rebuild them a little bit quicker. And naturally, we've always got our plethora of bug fixes that we put into the product. Like I said, just a new patch that went out last night around 6 p.m. to fix an issue that I was concerned about. So if you haven't checked out Monkey Tools, you should definitely do so. And don't forget that we have a full course on how to use all the features in Monkey Tools. It's completely free, available at Skillwave. Speaking of Skillwave, if you are looking for support in building your solutions and you'd like a real human rather than an artificial one, you can always come and be part of my Ask Ken Anything subscription here. This is a great session. We hosted one of these yesterday, a couple of hours where we just talk about data. We talk about features. I showed off a new feature that we're building for Monkey Tools that I'm not going to talk about yet. Took lots of great questions. If you're interested in having that kind of a support network and meeting some great people who are really passionate about this space, you should definitely come and check out this product. If you want to take your Excel skills to a solid intermediate level or know someone who needs to, definitely have them check out our Fundamentals Academy. This includes a great curated training program for pivot tables and data visualization and formulas, as well as access to our Ask Ken Anything sessions. And this entire program is also included as a side benefit of our Self-Service BI Academy, which is our premier training program, which includes our Monkey Tools license. And it includes training on Power Query, Power Pivot, Power BI, as well as the Ask Ken Anything sessions and a lot more. So if you're looking for some great training, you should definitely check out our Skillwave products. This meetup, along with all meetups, of course, is recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. Usually within 24 hours, it'll actually show up there. If you're subscribed to the channel, you get notified not right away. If you're not, we will post a notification on the meetup site as well. But you can definitely go back. I'm sure Joseph's going to have some awesome stuff to show us here that you want to revisit. So just, be on the lookout for when that recording is posted. And then our penultimate slide here is if you would like to come and actually be part of our user group and show some of the cool stuff that you're working with Excel or Power BI or anything in the Power Platform stack, we would love to have you. Just fill out the form, get in touch, and we will get you on our stage. And now it's my great pleasure to welcome my good friend Joseph Yeates back to the program to talk about reusable DAX patterns with calculation group and user functions. Could you have made that title any longer?
I was just thinking that I could have added a few more words, but yeah.
There you go. Awesome. I'll take that away and give you the floor.
Good. Thanks, Ken. Well, hopefully the title's the worst part of the presentation. That's always the aim. Awesome. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Usually at this point, I say welcome to what's new in Power BI, but no, today, the feature presentation, reusable DAX patterns with calculation groups and user-defined functions. And really what this session is all about is it's not getting super deep into really complicated DAX. It's all about how can we make our workflows and how can we make our Power BI development more efficient. DAX has obviously been around for a long time. And if you work in Power BI, you've probably built a lot of DAX measures, calculated columns. You're just working with DAX all the time. And calculation groups is a relatively new feature in Power BI. I think it originally came out in 2019. It's been in Power BI sort of natively since 2023, maybe a couple of years. User-defined functions are even more recent. And what these allow us to do is to take all that knowledge we have in DAX, take all that DAX development, and we can just streamline our process. So before we get into all that, why don't we, I found my slide, why don't we talk about me? I usually forget to do this. So hello, everybody. My name is Joseph. As Ken alluded to, or if you come to the Vancouver Power BI user group, I usually present every month what's new in Power BI, but I also usually have about once a year feature presentation. I have a blog and website, feathersanalytics.com, and my LinkedIn is up there as well if you want to connect. Would love to hear your thoughts either on the presentation today, or if you just want to connect and chat about, anything to do with Power BI, Excel, SQL, R, Python, whatever to do with data. That's totally in my wheelhouse. I'm currently an analytics consultant, working mostly within Power BI and Excel. And a lot of the demos that I'm going to go through today have really been inspired by real world solutions and real world reports. So what's nice is that a lot of the learnings, a lot of the things I've sort of pieced along the way, I can pull together and try and streamline a little bit into some of these demos. So our agenda for today, we're going to start with an overview of our scenario. We'll take a look at the Power BI report, take a look at the data model, and we can see exactly what our 3 demos are going to be and what they're going to solve. We'll look at calculation groups first, looking at some time intelligence, but also some other benefits of using calculation groups for some other things. Then we'll look at user-defined functions. This will be a very gentle introduction. We'll start at the very basics of just what is a user-defined function, what is the syntax to create them, and then we'll sort of build up from there. And then finally, we're going to look at how we can use calculation groups and user-defined functions together. Obviously, they're better together as we try and build out some financial statements. We're going to look at an income statement, and we're also going to look at a balance sheet. So we're going to add some conditional formatting, and we're also going to make some of our time intelligence conditional for those 2 financial statements as well. So with that, why don't we have a little bit of an overview of our scenario? So I'll start in the slide and then we'll jump into Power BI. So we have 2 fact tables in our data model, and we sort of have 2 parallel scenarios within our Power BI report. We have a fact GL table and a fact sales table. So for our fact GL, this is really like the accounting view of the world. We have GL balances that are attributed to accounts, so accounts outlined in our chart of accounts, but they're also attributed to companies. And all of this information is at a monthly period grain. So all of that accounting information, when we look at it over time, it's at a month level. There's no daily information, it's all at a month. And these companies that these balances are attributed to every month have a start and an end date, as our organization has created organizations, closed organizations down, just in sort of the regular course of business. So we have the accounting view of the world, and then we have sort of like the operational view of the world. We have a sales fact table, and every sale we have in our fact table is attributed to an employee as well as a company. However, employees also belong to companies. So that means each sale actually has 2 companies that it's related to, or 2 organizations. It has an employee org and it has a sales org. And we'll take a look at that in the data model in just a second. And similarly, employees have both a hire date and a termination date. So that was a lot of chit chat. Let's get into Power BI and we can just look at the data model to see what I was looking at. So this is our sort of like, again, the accounting view of the world. We have our dim period, which are accounting periods. We have our account. And let's actually add our financial statement line item dimension as well. So all of the balances have a related account, and they all have related company as well. And if we want to take a look at that fact table, we see here it's just a numbered account, period in a year, month format, and then a company ID with some amount and some budget. The sales, on the other hand, we have fact sales here. We have just our date dimension. So we do have sales on a more standard calendar. It's on a daily grain. They can also relate to an account, and we have company and we have employee. But one thing, one update that we'll need to deal with is that fact sales can relate to a company. But if we see here, our department, our employees all belong to a company as well. So our company dimension can relate directly to our fact sales dimension, but the active relationship is by default, our companies filter our employees, which filter our sales. So our sales by default, when we filter by company, are filtered by employee company. And it may be that we also want to see how we can filter by company employee too. But we'll come back to that in just a second. So if we jump into our first demo here, we have sort of a basic scenario. We have a table of data. We have total sales and number of sales for our fact sales table. And we're looking at this by date. And then we also have some balances. We have total amount, we have total budget by our accounting period here. And why don't I increase that font size a little bit just to make it a little bit easier to see. And we'll do the row headers too. And why don't we do the same thing over here? All right. And then we have the exact same information, just visualized in a line chart underneath. And so our first task is we need to add some time intelligence to our report. And our time intelligence for our sales table is we want to look at it by current period. So this is what this table is already doing. When we want to look at 2025, all we need to do is add the year 2025 from our date dimension into our visual, and our total sales measure and our number of sales measure aggregates that information for us. If we add month in, it aggregates it for the month, and we go down to the day, and we see the same thing here. But we also want to display in our visual, not just for the current period, but we want to show month to date and year to date as well. And we want to do this for both of our measures. So typically, if we wanted to show this for just total sales as an example, if I open up our fact sales table over here, I could create a new measure, and we could call this like sales month to date. And we could just say, okay, I want to take our total sales. Let's get the IntelliSense out the way. And I want to calculate this for our dates month to date. So we have that nice built-in date intelligence for us. What is our total sales for the months in the date based on our date dimension? And I can drop that into our visual here. And now we see that at the month grain, these two balances should match. But then at the daily grain, we aggregate that month to date information. So this is good. But then if we wanted to do month to date for our number of sales measure, we'd have to create num sales month to date. And then if we had to do a year to date measure, we'd have to create that for both total sales and number to date. And you can see how quickly we're creating multiple measures with the exact same repeated logic. All we would be doing is we'd be taking total sales and we'd be replacing this with our number of sales measure to get our number of sales month to date, right? We would just have to update it here. update it here. And we have two measures that are essentially doing the exact same transformation on those base measures. We're just taking a calculate, we're calculating a single measure, and all we're doing is adjusting that context by using this dates month to date function. So a better way to do this and to help save us time is by using calculation groups. And what that allows us to do is we can create this sort of like template pattern of our date intelligence logic. And we can just put a placeholder in place of a measure that we want to apply these to. And we only have to define this pattern once, and we can apply it to any measure, and we can apply it within our report in a few different ways. We can add it to visuals, we can add it to slicers, we can add it to our filter pane. We can do a lot of different things with it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this logic. I'm going to head into the model view. And if I go to the model pane over here, I'm going to go to calculation group and new calculation group. And when I do this, we create a few different things for us. We have a calculation group column, and the first calculation item. And we see that this first calculation item is just called calculation item, and we get this selected measures function. So selected measure is what's going to act as a placeholder for any of those DAX measures that we want to apply our date intelligence pattern to. Whether we want to apply it to our total sales or our number of sales, this selected measure is what's acting sort of like as a parameter placeholder for whatever measure we're going to apply it to. So I'm just going to call this one current, because this is what's going to give us our current day information. And I'm just going to leave it as our selected measure. I want to create a new calculation item now. And this is what is going to give us this month-to-date view. So my month-to-date logic, rather than applying this to a specific function, I can apply it, or a specific DAX measure rather, I just want to apply it to this selected measure placeholder, like this. And I'm going to create one more calculation item. We'll call this one year-to-date, and we'll use the dates year-to-date instead. So now I've built 3 calculation items. I'm just going to rename my calculation group. We'll call this date, time, intelligence, and I'll rename the column as well to date, time, intelligence. And we have our 3 items. We have current, month to date, and year to date. So now back in our visual, if I take out our month to date measure, I just have those 2 base measures, our number of sales and our total sales. But now within this matrix, I can take that date intelligence, and we are calculating the current value, which is just the base measure. We're calculating the month-to-date value, and we're also calculating the year-to-date value. And we see that at the year level, the month level, and down at the daily grain as well, we've only had to define that month-to-date and year-to-date logic once, and it's applied to both our measures. So in this example, we've created 2 base measures, and we've created 3 time period date calculations. So we've created 5 things basically, right? We've defined 2 measures, and we've defined 3 calculation items in our calculation group. And if we had to create individual measures for each of these things, it would, instead of 2 plus 3, it would be 2 times 3. We'd have to create 6 measures to replicate this view. So in this sort of small scale, there's not that much difference between just creating all individual measures as opposed to creating calculation items. But think if we had, instead of total sales and number of sales, we also had average sales, maybe we had largest sale, we had all these different DAX measures that we wanted to, we'd have to create all these additional month-to-date versions of a higher number of base measures. We'd have to create all the year-to-date sort of versions of all those base measures. And we're saving all of that development time, all of that sort of copy pasting, all that duplicated code, to now we're centralizing that logic just in our calculation group items. And if I click back into our report, if it's going to let me, we can also add, not just in the columns here, but we can add it as like a visual filter. I can say, just show us current, just show month to date, just show year to date, and we can interact with these calculation items in a lot of different ways in our report. So that's how we can use calculation items just for sort of out of the box date intelligence. But we can do the same thing with our accounting periods as well. Obviously, these don't follow the same date granularity. We can't use those same built-in date, nice date functions like dates month to date and dates year to date. But I can build a new calculation group to help us get to the same place with those accounting periods. And that's what's nice. Calculation groups and calculation items are really flexible. So if I go and create a new calculation group, we're still going to have a current version in our accounting period time intelligence. We'll just call this one selected measure. But rather than months to date and year to date, I do also want year to date in our accounting version, but I want year to date and job to date. So job to date is just all time. I just want to know what is our all-time balance of this account, what is the year-to-date balance of this account, and what is the current period balance of this account. And our year-to-date measure is going to look a little bit different. We're going to have to calculate what the max period is in the current context of our visual. So we'll say, what is our max period? We're also going to need to know what is the year of this period. So we'll just call this like period year. And we'll find the year from our period dimension. And then what we need to do is we're going to still return calculate on our selected measure placeholder.
Hey, Joseph, we've got a question here asking if you can show the period table.
Absolutely. I am going to do that right now. Where is it? Oh, does it not support the zoom in the same way? So dim period has two columns. We have period in this year, and sort of like the year, 4-digit year, 2-digit month format. And then we also have a year column, which just gives us that 4-digit year. So it's at that monthly grain, whereas our date dimension is like a more full proper date dimension down to the day granularity here. And then max period. So for our year-to-date logic for our period, since we can't rely on that built-in date logic, what we're doing is we're looking for a given period in our visual. What is it? What year does it have? And then we're taking the measure in that context. We're stripping away the context of the dim period, and we want to return all the values where the period are less than or equal to that period, but also when the year is equal to the selected year. Like this. I know that's a lot of typing. It's a lot of syntax. And I'm going to take this, and then for sort of the all-time version, we only need where it's less than or equal to that period. So job to date is just the cumulative balance from the beginning of time. It's all balances less than or equal to a given period, whereas the year-to-date version is less than or equal to that period only within the same year. And I want to move this one up. So we're in the order of current, year-to-date, and job-to-date. And now with a more flexible version, I can drop it in our periods, and we get the exact same. We get the same sort of time intelligence. We've had to define it slightly differently. But now we have that same sort of flexibility. We're getting just the current value for our total amount and our total budget measures. Our year-to-date amount resets every time we hit a new calendar year. So when the calendar flips from 2025 to 2026, we have our year-to-date starts again, but our job-to-date, as we see here, doesn't. It's cumulative, and it just keeps on adding up from the beginning of time all the way to our last period here. The only thing I need to do is I need to rename our period, accounting period calculation group to, we'll call this one period time intelligence, and we'll rename the column as well to period time intelligence. Perfect. So time intelligence, as we've gone through those two demos of using more the standard date patterns, date functions, to the more custom version at the month grain time intelligence. Those are both really standard uses, and those are very popular uses of calculation items, because those are normal things in lots of Power BI reports that you do need different versions of those base measures for. We're always, or typically, we do need to manipulate base measures to know what is the value now, what is the value year to date, month to date, all time, etc. It's those sort of standard manipulations and creating different versions of lots of different measures that lends itself really well to creating calculation groups and calculation items. But we can also do some more funky stuff to save us time by using calculation items as well. Recall in our sales, sort of the part of our data model that just looks at sales, where we have company has an inactive relationship directly to our fact sales table. But by default, company filters our fact sales table by going through dim employee first. If I take a look at the tables, our employee, or our company dimension rather, we just have 3 companies, 1, 2, and 3. If we look at our employee dimension, we also only have 3 companies. Let me just refresh this. That data looks a little out of date. For the department, here we go. And we see each employee belongs to a department or a company. In this case, they belong to companies 1, but then it's 2 and 2. No employees currently belong to company 3. And if we look on our fact sales table, sales can actually belong directly to each of the 3 companies. So right now, when we're filtering through our employee dimension, all sales are attributed to just one of 2 employee companies, but we also have an inactive direct relationship to the company table, which attributes sales to all 3 companies. So the default view when I filter our sales table by company 1 is we see that we're just creating a subset of our sales here. When I filter by company 2, we're getting a different subset. And when I filter by company 3, our sales are completely blank. And again, that's because we're going through that employee dimension. And it could be that we actually want to see a version where we're filtering directly from company to sales to see what our sales are like attributed directly to the company. And what we would typically do is if we create a new measure here, we would call this something like company sales. And we would calculate our total sales measure. And then we would do the use relationship function, where we would say the relationship we want to use to filter within our data model, we want to override that default active relationship, and we want to use the inactive relationship that goes from our company ID to our sales company ID. So that's how we would do it for a single measure. But as you can imagine, if we had to do this for a single measure, then any measure that exists in a specific page or in a specific visual we would have to create this version of. We would have to use calculate, wrap it around whatever base measure we want. And then we would have to say, okay, we want to use this relationship from our data model. We want to filter the report this way instead. Rather than create individual measures, we can absolutely use this as a calculation group item and then apply it as a filter to our visual. So let's just exit out of that measure for now. We can go back in. We can create a new calculation group. And for this calculation item, this one we can call something like company to sales. And this is where, let's delete that. Rather than total sales, we'll use this selected measure wrapper. And all we're doing is saying, take this measure, and we want to use this relationship in our data model when we're filtering it. We can rename this new calculation group visual filters and CG visual filters. And now if I were to take a copy of our table here, if it lets me drag it down, except on this one, I am going to, let's take off the year-to-date version filter. On this bottom table, I'm going to take our visual filter, and I want to apply our company to sales calculation item filter on it. When I go to our analytics co as the filter, we see that our data is being filtered, but the two tables are being filtered in a different way. The top table is still going from company to employee to the data model. But since our second table has that use relationship filter applied to it, when I click on company A, it's now, or company 1, it's now being filtered directly. When I go to company 2, it's now being filtered in a different way. And company 3, rather than no employees, so it's returning no data, we now see all the sales being attributed to that in the second table. So rather than having to create different versions of all of those base measures of total sales and number of sales, we can now just define that logic once, apply it as a filter, in this case to just one visual, but it could be to an entire page or an entire report if we wanted to, and we've greatly reduced the number of measures that we need to create. Let's hop back into our slides. And that was the first demo that we went through here. We see for time intelligence, we're simplifying our measure design by defining base measures and time intelligence separately and just once. So just before I jump into the next demo of using user-defined functions for identifying active and inactive entities, are there any questions or comments in the chat, Ken?
There was one question from Fernando here. If you want to show one time intelligence measure at a time, i.e. month to date only, and let the user choose to switch between month to date and year to date, how would you approach that?
That is a great scenario. So I'm just going to unfilter this. So do you mean in a table like this where we've dropped our calculation item on the rows, we have sort of like our date stuff down, or we have the calculation item on the columns rather, we have our date stuff on the rows, we have a few measures in the body. How could I control that I only wanted to see like the current value, or only see month to date, or only see year to date?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I'm interpreting it. Is, I mean, if you had a slicer to say, listen, hey, I want to see,
Yep.
you know, what month to date values or year to date values or, you know, lifetime to date values, how could you easily switch between 1, 2, or 3 of those, you know?
Perfect. Yeah. And it is as easy as just adding a slicer. Like I don't even need to add this onto the columns of the visual. If this is what I wanted to do on this one visual here, I'm going to take, I can just take that off the columns, and I can take our date time intelligence here. We could just leave it as a visual actually, but let's change it to another one. Now, current is being displayed, month to date's being displayed, year to date's being displayed here. So it's not even part of this visual anywhere. This just has like our 2 base measures and some columns from our dimension table. But our calculation items can be individual options within a slicer that updates and applies that logic to all the measures in a visual.
Thanks, man. That is brilliant. It just makes me so sad when I see what I don't have in Excel now.
Yeah, lots of little shortcuts. Awesome. All right. Well, why don't we move on to user-defined functions? And this I know you have a version of in Excel for sure. So hopefully we're sort of on the on the same page with this one. So for the second example, we're going to be looking at identifying active or inactive entities. And we're going to do this by creating our definition of what active is for our report. We're going to define that logic centrally with the user-defined function, and then we can use that function and reference that centralized logic in multiple different measures. So when we're building user-defined functions in DAX, this is sort of the generic framework or template that we use, and there's a few different elements here. We use the function keyword to define that it's a function we're defining. In a similar way, when we define measures in either like the Tyndall view or in the DAX editor, we would have the measure keyword. Here we're defining a function, and we have to give that function a name. And that's the name that we can use when we actually call that function later. Within the first part of the function, within the brackets, we set our parameters. So these are all the inputs that we take into our function. Then we have the little arrow operator, which separates the input parameters that we need for our function to the actual logic of what we're doing with those parameters. And that this is the DAX expression that takes those parameters, takes those input, does something with them to produce some sort of transformation output. So if we head back into our Power BI report here, if we go to our second page, we see that we have a scenario here where we have our 3 companies, and each company has a start date and potentially an end date. Right, so we see that for our company 1, it has a start date at the beginning of 2025 and an end date at the end of 2025. Our company B started at the beginning of 2025 and doesn't have an end date, so we can assume it's still an active company. And for our third company, it started at the beginning of 2026 and there's no end date, so it's still active. And if we take a look at our employee table, I'm just going to replace some of these items where instead of company name, we can do employee ID, and we have hire date, and we have termination date. So both of these things, companies or employees, follow a similar pattern. We know that there's a set window between a starting point and an ending point between which these entities are considered active. And for the company side here, what's interesting is that even though we've defined active start and end dates, we can see that there are still balances for all 3 companies that span the entire period. And it could be that this is a mistake. There could be a good reason for this from our accounting team of maybe we thought these companies were going to exist, or we didn't do a key conversion properly when we were reallocating balances, or we've missed some journal entries, whatever. But we know that we have this logic, and we know this is how we want to define what something is active or not. And we want to use this definition of what is active to compare these like total balances to compare to active balances. Like what were the balances only when the companies were active? And to a similar way, we could do the same thing with employee sales. So if we take a table of data here, I'm just going to put it underneath this employee table. Rather than period, we can take information from our date table. So we have year, month name, and date. And if we take the same employee ID and look at total sales, we can start to see, okay, why we have some sales in for all employees in 2025, only some in 2026. But if we do have sales before or after their active period, we want to be able to identify that as either a system error or something that we need to update in our report. And how we can do this is, rather than defining different measures that compare something to a start period and end period, we can centralize this logic within a user-defined function. And then we can reference that function with our different measures later on. So why don't I go to our DAX query view in Power BI, and this is where we can start defining our isActive function. So I'm going to use that function keyword here. I want to define a function, and we can call this function very creatively isActive. And now we have to think of what do we want our input parameters to be to determine if something is active or not. So I know for sure that we need to have a date input to know that we're testing for this employee on this date or this company in this period, are they active or not? So we can just call this like selected point. Then we also need to define the starting point of where the entity is considered active. So we'll say start point, and we'll say end point as well. So those are the three inputs that we have. And now we need to define our logic of what do we want to do with these input parameters. So this is where we just do a logical test of if our start point is less than or equal to our selected point. And we'll say if the end point is blank, assuming that if there's no termination date, there's no end date for a company, we're going to assume that they're still active. So if our endpoint is blank, and we can say, or if our endpoint is greater than or equal to our selected point, we can end it like this. So we've defined this basic function. We have three input parameters, and we're just doing a logical test that will return true or false. We want to make sure that our start point is less than or equal to our selected point, and we want to make sure that our end point is either blank or it's greater than or equal to our selected point. So I'm just going to commit that measure to our data model. And now if I go into the model tab in this data bar, we have one new function here. We see it has the nice FX icon and is active. So if I go back into our report, I'm going to take this total amount out, and I'm going to create a new measure. And we're going to call this, instead of total amount, we can say total active amount. Actually, no, we're not going to do total active amount. We're going to say we need to determine if the company is active first. So we're going to create a measure active company. And this is where we can use that isActive function, user-defined function that we just created. And we see these are the three input parameters that we defined: the selected point, the start point, and the end point too. So to determine if a company is active, we first need to say, okay, what period are we looking in? So what is the selected value of our period? Why don't we space it out a little bit? And then we need to define what is the start point of our company. So we can take the start date of the company, and then we can take the end date of the company as well. So now when I take this measure and drop it into the matrix, we can see that we get false values for all companies in 2024. And if we look at our start and end dates, that makes sense because all of these companies started in 2025 or 2026. So if I scroll down a bit more, we see that company A and B are active at the beginning of 2025, but company C is not. Again, that makes sense with what we're seeing for our start and our end dates over here, because company C started a year later in 2026. And then we see at the turn of the year in 2026, we see false values for company A. Again, that makes sense. And then true values for company C. So it looks like our measure is working as intended. And now what we want to do is we want to, instead of just saying true or false values, we can use this measure as a filter to return just the active amount by a comparison. So this is where we can create a new measure. We can call this total active amount. And this is where we want to calculate our total amount. And by doing this, we want to filter our company table. And we can just use this active company measure that we just defined that's returning these true or false values. And I just need one more close brackets there. So we're using this measure to filter our company table. And this measure was created from our user-defined function. And now I can drop this into our first table here, and we can see the comparison. Whereas we just had transactions and balances for all periods, for all companies, just using our raw base measure, we now have the ability just to filter by our active amount here to only return those balances where the company is active. And now we have that logic centralized. We can reuse it to do a similar thing for our employees. So if I wanted to determine what an active employee is, I can use our same isActive function. So I can go to active employee. I can use our isActive user-defined function. And rather than our selected period, I can say, what is the selected value of our date from our dim date? So notice I'm using the same pattern, but different inputs into that same function. I want to take our min hire date. I want to take our max termination date. And now I can build an additional measure off of this as well by saying, what are our, maybe instead of what are our total active sales, I want to highlight any inactive sales we have in our sales dimension. So we can say, okay, what are our inactive sales? We're taking our total sales and we're filtering our employee dimension when active employee is not equal to true. And now I can drag in our inactive sales down here. And we can see that we have quite a few inactive sales. We have quite a few inactive sales that occurred outside of the range of our of those employee start and end date. And in fact, I think I might need to refresh the data for this one as well to reduce it. Or is it actually that high? It might actually be that high. Let's take a look and compare. We'll take total sales and total sales. Okay, something funky is going on. Let me just refresh everything and see. Weird. Okay. Why don't we try just with dates maybe? All right. We have employee. I just want to do a quick sanity check that I haven't missed something weird going on before I completely give up on this nice little demo. I don't think that I have. Employee ID is correct. Totals, this is total sales inactive. Oh, why don't we take it off here? There we go. All right. That was my issue, is I needed to have a date in the context of the inactive when I was filtering the employee table. So these are my inactive transactions down here. We only have a few of them. That makes sense. Here are our total sales transactions up above. And the reason the filtering wasn't working is when I defined not our total sales inactive, but our active employee here, we were looking at a selected value of dim date. So dim date, when it wasn't in the context of our visual, this test of active or not wasn't working. Now it is in the filtered context. And when I look at our total sales inactive, and we're filtering employees when our employee is inactive, or looking at total sales only for dates when our employee is inactive, now we're returning just 2 dates for employee 1000 and 2 dates for employee 3000. So that both when we're testing to see if a employee or if a company is active versus inactive, we've defined how we want to define that logic once, and then we can reuse those patterns in 2 different places, which is nice, because then if I needed to go and update our logic here, like maybe we can say, an entity like an employee or a company, they can sort of just be put on pause, if you will. We might have a status flag in one or both of those tables where even if they're outside of this period, they do have a termination date, but if their status is equal to E, we still want to consider them active. Rather than going through a bunch of different measures to update this logic, it's centralized. I can just do it here once, and then we can safely reference this logic with other measures in our report. And with that, so we saw a function, we named the function, we had some input, we had an expression. But just to go to a little bit of a best practice, there are actually some additional additional arguments or additional clarification we can add to our user-defined functions. This being the type, the subtype, and the parameter mode. And the reason why these can be important is because it just more explicitly defines what inputs are expected in our function. And it also helps us define how we can safely use them afterwards. So the first is type, and it's defining, okay, what type of input should the parameter accept? It can be like a single scalar value, or it could even have a table as an input. After type, we have subtype, and this further defines what type of input. So if it is a scalar value, as an example, are we expecting text? Are we expecting a number? Are we expecting a date? We can define that here. And finally, we have the mode of the parameter. So do we want to just evaluate this parameter initially and then use it in our calculation and pass the result onto our UDF rather? Or do we want to just, or do we need to continually reevaluate this argument within our filtered context? So to see what that looks like for us, notice how when we defined our user-defined function here, we were just using generic selected point, start point, and end point because we want to be able to take a period or a date as the selected point, start point, and end point, right? We want to be able to take either one of those things as our input parameter. But it could be that for either this function or for a variation of the function, we want to explicitly say, no, we only want date, time, or like date inputs in. We don't want to accept periods because we only want to use this for employees, as an example. What we could do is we could create a new function. I'm just going to define it on a new page here. we could define a new function, and we could call this isActive date. And we could say we still want the selected point. But that we want this to be a scalar value. We want it to be date time, and it's not evaluated as an expression. It's evaluated as a value. And we can do the same thing for our selected point, our start point, and our end point. So notice the syntax is a little bit different. It's still these same three input parameters, but I just have some additional arguments after here. And then we want to do something with these inputs. And since we've already defined our isActive user-defined function, I can actually use that user-defined function to generate the logic of this isActive date function. So I can call it here isActive, and I just want to do this on the selected, if I could spell, selected point parameter, start point parameter, and end point parameter here. So in this case, rather than our user-defined function being defining logic for a DAX measure, I'm using a user-defined function as input to another user-defined function. I'm creating an isActive date function that uses that same logic again. I'm just restricting some of these input parameters, but it's the same logic that I'm defining. And then when we go through, we'll see when I try and do it with periods again. So if I tried to do our active employee or active company here, if I tried using our isActive date, it will try and parse it as a date. And did it actually work? Oh, this time it actually worked. Interesting. So it was able to parse this as a date, but if it was getting text values instead, like maybe if we said selected value was something else, it wouldn't be able to work. It's expecting a date time value, and if it gives it something that it can't parse as that, we can more safely handle it with some of those additional arguments. So that's how we can define first just sort of a basic isActive function. We can build DAX measures off of it, and then it can also be an input into another user-defined function, which I think is pretty cool. Anything in the chat, or can I move on to our final demo?
Just a quick comment on this one here. You'd actually said that UDS would be available in Excel. I'm going to dispute that, my friend, and say that they're not. There's no define, there's no function available in DAX that I can see, unless you've got a secret tip that I don't know in that regard.
No, sorry. I was thinking more along the lines of just being able to define your own functions in DAX.
Yeah, that's not available in Excel, unfortunately. I don't think. You got everybody really excited, but I don't think that that's going to be happening. So,
well,
you can make your own measures.
I am sorry for the false promises. For some reason, I thought that was in. Okay.
No, and honestly, I don't actually see it. I don't actually see it coming for a while, just because the Excel engine is so far behind what the DAX engine is in Power BI. So I wouldn't be holding your breath for anybody that's looking for that in the Excel world. But just, I'm going to make sure we're clear on that one, because it definitely doesn't look like it's there. Anyway, enough said.
No,
I'll let you go on.
No. Thank you for the clarification. Right. So we looked at calculation groups, calculation items. We've looked at user-defined functions that are only in Power BI. And now let's see how we can use them together. So we have an income statement sort of page here. We have the main body of our income statement. We have, if we just zoom in here, we have our actual and we have our budget. And then we sort of have the different breakdowns. We have revenue at the top, and then we define like what's our cost of sales, what are our different types of expenses to get to our net income at the bottom. So we start with our revenue, and we're just taking away all of our expenses essentially to get to net at the bottom. We have our actual values for a given period. So if we toggle different periods, we can see what actually happened and also what was our budget for that given period. And so there's two things that we want to add to this income statement. We want to be able to see the income statement both in the current period that we're selecting from a slicer on the page here, but we also want to see it month to date, and we also want to see it we also want to see it year to date, and we also want to see it all time. So we can see sort of 3 columns of data. What is the current period, what is the year to date, and what is the all time, both actual and budget for these different line items. And what's great about this is we've already built that into our calculation group. So I can just take our time periods, put it on columns, and we already have it here. So we were looking at this in a slightly different way with some different types of analysis, but now we have our income statement look by 3 different ways. We have current, year to date, job to date. We don't need to worry about creating any sort of really complicated measures. We just have our actual income statement measure. We have our budget income statement measure, and that time intelligence can be applied onto these new measures as well. So great, we've expanded out our income statement. But one thing I want to do is I want to add some conditional formatting onto our income statement. And what I want to do is I want to show our actuals versus our budget. And what I want to do is I want to conditionally format the background of the actual column to show if our actual value is favorable compared to our budget. And the reason why I say if it's favorable is because depending on what section of the income statement we're in, higher may be better or lower may be better. If we look at revenue as an example, if revenue is less than our budget, that's not favorable. So we would want the actuals to be displayed in red as an example. But for our expenses, if our expenses is less than our budget, that's actually a good thing. We've budgeted for a higher expense. Our expenses are lower, so that is favorable for us. And so we would want that background to be green. But the opposite is also true. If revenue is higher than budget, that's favorable for us. So we want that to be green. And if expenses are higher, that's actually worse for expenses. So we want that to be red. So we want to do this for our income statement, but we also want to do this for our balance sheet as well. And typically when we're building financial statements in Power BI, we build a lot of DAX measures. We build a lot of DAX measures, not just to populate the body of these financial statements, but also for the formatting as well. But what's nice is that we can use a user-defined function to help make some of this formatting more straightforward for us. And we can apply the same function, but we can apply it and tweak the input to different financial statements. So let's head back into our DAX query view, and we want to define a function that's going to show the variance in our financial statements and determine what we want the background color to be. So this is really a conditional formatting function. The output of it is going to be hex codes for colors. And rather than type it out, I'm just going to paste it in here and we'll walk through it. So we have our FS variance, and let's not call it font color, let's call it color. So this is our financial statements variance color. And we see it takes on 2 input values. We have our actuals and we have our budget. So our function does quite a few things. First, we determine the variance. We take the actual value and we take away the budget value that was input. And this is the variance. So it's either going to be a positive or a negative value. And then we determine what is the favorability rule for this specific line item. So in our financial statements line item dimension, I have a helper column here, which is favorability. So for our statement type, in this case, it's our profit and loss statement, our income statement, we see that lower is better for our revenue and higher is better for our expenses. And that's because income is negative and higher is positive in our actual source data. It's displayed in the opposite way, but this is how it's typically stored. So basically, we are showing that favorability is different, whether it's a income line type or an expense line type. Then we're setting with variables what we want our good and bad colors to be. So our good colors is green, our bad color is red, and then our neutral color is just white. And down here, this is where we have our logic of what we want to output. If either our budget or our actuals are blank, we'll just return the neutral color. Otherwise, if higher is better, if our variance value is a 0 or a positive number, return the good color. If it's lower, then a bad color. But if our rule is lower is better and our variance is less than or equal, then it's a good color or a bad color. And then we have our neutral color as sort of like our placeholder leftover argument here. So I'm going to update our model with this variance function. And now we see that we have a new function, our financial statement variance color user-defined function. And in order to conditionally format our income statement, I just need to create a new measure. And this new measure can be called, we can just call it CF for conditional formatting for our income statement. And I'll use our variance color user-defined function. We're expecting an actual value and a budget value. So our actual will be our income statement actual. Our budget will be our income statement budget. And then in the formatting for our income statement, under cell elements, for our actual values, I want to toggle on background values. And for both values and totals, I'm going to use this measure here. So our conditional formatting income statement measure uses our user-defined function with these inputs. I'm going to hit OK. And now that we see that we get whether our actuals are higher or lower than our budget, depending on if something is favorable or not favorable. So we can see when our revenue is higher. These things, let me see. Maybe this was a refresh issue. It looks like the logic is backwards no, that looks right. Okay, so when it looks like everything is backwards. Why is everything backwards? These demos today, let's see. Let's go back to our helper column. Lower is better. That's right. Let's go back and just troubleshoot for a second. When our higher is better. Yeah, that looks good. Interesting. Let's see our income actual and our income actual. This is weird. Okay. Well, we're just gonna go with it. It's backwards, but it kind of works. We can see when our actual compared to our budget, we're getting those conditional formatting, and it's responsive to the different periods when we toggle off and on. And not only is it responsive to the different periods, but it's also different if we're looking at cumulative value all time, our year-to-date value, or just our current value here. We don't even need to have budget in our financial statements anymore. We can just have the conditional formatting here. And we don't need budget in the visual. We're still comparing it to the budget as it would be for the line item. And we're getting this dynamic conditional formatting. Now, we can do the same thing for the balance sheet as well. rather than conditional formatting for our income statement, we can do conditional formatting for our balance sheet. So I can just replace still using our variance color measure. I can compare our balance sheet actuals to our balance sheet budget. And we can format our background of our income, of our balance sheet, of our financial statement in the same way for values and totals. And we see now when we're comparing current assets to budget, higher is better. So this is good. Higher is better. Higher is better, but it's lower. So it's red. So it looks to be working on our balance sheet. I'll have to look in to see why our income statement, something's wonky there. But once again, it is responsive. The one last update we're going to make to our balance sheet is when I drop in our period time intelligence into our columns, we see that we're returning the exact same values for current year to date and job to date. And that's because of how a balance sheet is different than an income statement. A balance sheet is already cumulative. In order to get an accurate balance sheet, we need all the values of all time to display to get what our current assets or current liabilities are. Whereas our income statement, it does make sense that we can have different balances in a given month or year to date or job to date. So if I do want to have additional information for our balance sheet, I actually don't want to have the same calculations as we've outlined in our current or in our period time intelligence. Our current is fine, but for our year to date, this doesn't make sense for our balance sheet because what our current value and our year to date value is doing is just what job to date is already. So we could create a new calculation group to add some additional context and different columns in that balance sheet, or we could update the calculation group to have some different types of input based on what these placeholder measures are. So what I mean by that is for our balance sheet, our current value is already doing what our job to date does. So I don't need to display job to date for our balance sheet. What I can do is I can wrap the output in a conditional statement and say, rather than selected value, we have this is selected, or rather than selected measure, we have is selected measure. And I can say if our selected measures are our balance sheet actual or balance sheet budget, then I want to return blank. Otherwise, I want to return our regular job to date logic. So what this means is on our income statement, when the selected measures are our income statement actual and income statement budget, we'll still have our exact same period intelligence being applied. But for our balance sheet, we're just going to be returning blank. So if I go back now on our balance sheet, even though it says income statement, let's update that title. On our balance sheet, we now have no job to date column. On our income statement, we're still getting that same job to date column. So it's still working okay. And the thing we can adjust in our balance sheet is rather than year to date, maybe we want to display not year to date, but what these balances were at the beginning of the year. And we can do that in this year to date view as well. Rather than year to date, maybe we can name it to yearly so it still works. And we just need to add some additional code to our statement here. So we're saying we're still looking at what our period is. We're still looking at period end, but now we're also calculating what the prior year end period was. And we're doing the same conditional logic. If selected measure is equal to our balance sheet actual or balance sheet budget, we just want to return our prior year end period. We want to return those values as of the end of the prior year end. Otherwise, we want to do exactly what we were doing before, that same year to date logic, that's being used in our income statement, where we're saying it has to be less than a given period, but in the same year. So we can add this conditional logic to our calculation items, but we can adjust what adjustments are being made to the measures depending on which ones are being input into our placeholder measures. And now we see, if I toggle back to the end of 2025 in our balance sheet, we see that current assets are 707, non-current are 781, current liabilities are 383. When we go forward, we're getting those same 707, 781, or 383 down here. And we could even build additional columns to compare the yearly previous year end to the current year ends. And when I flip forward or flip back in the calendar, that's all responsive. But for our income statement, these are calculating in exactly the same way that they were before. So we're using a combination of a user-defined function for formatting that's using the same inputs, or we can use input parameters that are different for our income statement and our balance sheet. And we can also have a calculation group that's the same for our income statement and our balance sheet, but we can get it to return slightly different things just in terms of the balance sheet, because we know some of those input measures are being calculated slightly differently. So with that, that is my last demo of reusable DAX patterns in Power BI with calculation groups and user-defined functions. I was aiming to finish at 10:15. It's 10:16, so I went 1 minute over. I'm not sure if Ken has popped off or if he's still on the call. I'm going to pull up Teams in just a second. But thank you, everyone, for being here today. I know that was a bit of a whirlwind quick-fire tour through what's possible with calculation groups and user-defined functions. Again, my website and my blog are up here on the slides, as well as LinkedIn. If you want to connect with any questions from the presentation, or just connect to discuss or chat about anything Power BI, you're more than welcome to. I'm looking forward to chatting, and I'm going to hang around on the call for another few minutes or so to answer any questions. Otherwise, I will wrap up the session soonish. So again, thank you everyone for your time, and we'll see you again next time for what's new in Power BI next month.
Thank you, Joseph. That was a great presentation. Ken had to hop off the call, but we have a couple of questions in chat that I was wondering if I could ask you.
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
So the question comes from Dorothy. Does using direct query impact the usage of calculated groups or user-defined functions?
I would assume, so off the top of my head, I would assume calculation groups I think are okay. But to be honest, not sure about user-defined functions. I have to admit that's not a scenario that I've tested or built around using direct query. I've already gotten into trouble for saying something would work in Excel when it wouldn't in this presentation. So I'm not going to guess. I'm just going to say I don't know. I've not tested it yet.
All right. I don't see any other questions here in chat.
Okay.
If someone did want to ask a question, I guess now would be a good time to just unmute and go for it. But yeah, just a lot of thank you there in the chat.
Excellent. Well, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, if you want to come off mute or just type something in the chat, as I say, I'll hang around for another few minutes or so. But if anything comes up or you're more comfortable just messaging me directly, my contact details are up there. And yeah, the recording of the session will be up on the SkillWave YouTube channel, usually within 48 hours. And I'll also pull together the demo files that I used in this presentation, and we'll have them up on the meetup group chat or on the meetup group site as well. Dorothy, for the answer to your question, I played it safe and I just said I'm not sure. I don't know. I haven't tested that specific scenario. I assume calculation groups would be fine. I'm not sure about user-defined functions, but I'm also don't want to overpromise and say it's going to be fine in case it's a limitation. But one thing that you maybe can help point us in the right direction is the documentation for calculation groups Usually there's some limitations down at the bottom. So let's considerations. There's nothing about direct query or not for this. For user-defined functions, let's see, usually there's limitations or configurations. Let's see, object level security doesn't work. IntelliSense support. There's nothing that explicitly says they won't work in direct query. So we might be okay, but again, I'd have to test. Yeah. Excellent. Yes, please do try and let me know, and maybe we can put a ribbon on it for the next, and in the next meetup group, we can circle back and we can say definitively. But if that's it for all the questions, at least for now, again, that's it for this month of not what's new in Power BI, reusable DAX patterns with calculation groups and UDFs. Again, thank you everyone for this June meetup group in the Vancouver Power BI and Modern Excel user group, and I will see everyone next month. So with that, I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.